Man, it's gonna be a while before that Jimmy Donovan doesn't hit me right in the pit of my soul. Welcome in everybody to another episode of the Bark Brown Show. I'm Jacob, Mr. Casey Kinnaman, and Nick Carnes down below. Brought to you as always by our friends over at SeatGeek. You can go check us out over there if you want to get some tickets, some Cavs tickets, some Browns tickets, some concert tickets, any kinds of tickets.
No Cavs.
Yeah, ain't no Cavs. Go over to SeatGeek, use our promo code Barking Browns, all one word, all capital, get $20 off that first purchase. We hit that goal. We are monetized on YouTube, so thank you all for the 1,000 subs and for your money. Anyway, if you're on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up, hit that little bell, let us know when we go live. We're going to be back to 2 episodes a week. Really appreciate you guys. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Well, I'm glad you said something about that Jimmy Donovan intro. I'm going to add to it. I've heard a lot of clips over the last 2 weeks, and I'm going to pick a few things out and kind of add to the theme song. So looking forward to that, and I think that's some good thing I can talk about right now. There's not much else good to talk about at this moment, so that's where I'm going to start.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
That I'm going to be negative a lot tonight, but I want to push back that there's not a lot of good things to be happy about because I think there are.
I'm really excited to expand upon and immortalize our intro because that's something you're not getting any more of, which is crazy to think about. But I don't ever want it to change now. You know, I don't think we can ever change.
I think we're bumping Jim Rome. I think he's going to get bumped off.
Yeah, and I like Jim, but I like Jim.
Well, we're going to put a different Jim in Jim Rome's place.
Can I just start by saying, man, I was wholeheartedly bought in. I heard Jameis, reference Eminem and the lose yourself stuff and the edits and just being there Sunday against the Ravens, and I was wholeheartedly bought in. And Jacob and I were together for this game, and that entire second half, it was just like watching the same series on repeat.
He just kept saying over and over, "Oh, look, we got the ball and it's 20-3."
Right. So, I haven't seen defense like that in a while, where it felt like no matter what the Browns did, they were not scoring the football. They just weren't
when they had sustained drives.
Nope, you just weren't, and that's what I need to see. So so I drank too much of the Kool-Aid. I really did not want this season to go down the freaking tubes, and here we are. We're gonna make the best of it, and we're gonna find solutions. But I fought like hell to not let this season go down the tubes, and that is what happened against the Chargers on Sunday, unfortunately. So that's where I'm at. I drank too much Kool-Aid. It is what it is. Let's move forward and let's figure out what the hell we're supposed to do now.
I thought you had something to say, Casey. That's why.
No, I didn't know where you want to take it, but I can jump off that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I would argue that we're in the exact same position. It's just we dug too deep of a hole to start off with. Last Sunday's game isn't an indictment on what's going on right now. It's just you'd already had 6 losses before the game.
Yeah.
You couldn't score on the Chargers. No one has. They're the lowest scoring defense in the NFL. Now, I would argue you scored 3 points. You had 10, but 3 when it was a game, So it was a bad offensive game. Your defense shit the bed too. That was a bad game. Had you not built up so much negative equity going into that, it wouldn't feel like this cascading avalanche of bullshit that's never ending. But just, I'm not ready for the fun to be over.
If that's what the frustrating part of it is because I think it's funny because we sat here and we talked about the spark that Jameis gave him and the fun and all of that stuff. And the same people that told us you couldn't jump on the bandwagon for Jameis Winston after one game want to bury him after one game, which I think it's pretty crazy when you realize that this is a guy that had a 30 touchdown, 30 interception season. He had dropped interceptions. Those things were going to happen. This come back down to earth where he's I mean, he was available to be your number 2 for a reason. Like I think he is an adequate starter, but he's not it's not where he is. He makes too many peaks and valleys. It's a roller coaster with Jameis, and the only problem is you couldn't afford to lose very many games if you wanted to get back into it, like you said, because you were 1-6 going into this situation. It was a very disappointing season. It's very disappointing because it really put the caps on this being a competitive season. There can still be fun this year, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not ready for it to end. We're going to get into all of that stuff. But it really came down to like, okay, look, you're not winning anything of significance this year. It's not happening. So you got to start looking and pivoting to other things. What can you get out of this year? And we titled this episode, Is It Time to Hit the Reset Button? Because I think that's the biggest overall arching theme of this season is like, do you run it back next year? Like that is the $1 million question with this organization and everything. And we're going to get into that tonight. But like, yeah, man, it was one game that really stunk with this current setup. You were too deep already. So I still don't think like all this like throw out Jameis being a bridge quarterback. I listened to multiple draft pods on the regular basis, but I listened to multiple today that were talking about organizations not wanting to get quarterbacks in this draft because it's not a great quarterback draft. And when they were listing bridge quarterbacks for multiple teams, multiple different analysts immediately said Jameis Winston's name. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can completely, just like last week with the Ravens game, you can't completely say that's who Jameis is. Both of these are who he is. You can win games. The problem is 6 losses happened before he ever stepped foot on the field. So like, I think we're getting a little bit too far in the other direction because it's really like the totality of this season is not a play season came crashing down at once. When in reality, and Casey can tell you a pretty funny story about me going through all the emotions on Sunday. It's pretty fucking funny if we're being completely honest. But like once you sit down, you take your step back, you're like, okay, we kind of knew this was over and we kind of knew what this season was becoming. But it just sucks.
And I just want to add to the Jameis Bridge conversation. I heard a stat that we have more 2-win teams in the NFL at this point than we've had since like 1970 something.
8 or 9.
There's a ton. So the NFL right now has a quarterback problem. There is a dramatic shortage of quarterbacks in the NFL, and teams are certainly not being patient. See the Colts with Anthony Richardson and throwing Joe Flacco out there. There's a ton of reclamation project, quarterbacks out there. You know, Sam Darnold and Geno Smith and guys like that. And Derek Carr's still on the Saints. He feels like he's been. So I say all that to say that there's a lot. There are definitely good teams in the NFL, but there are a ton of bad ones. And so when it's like I've seen some people say like Jameis Winston's not good enough to be a bridge quarterback, but and it's like you look around the NFL and it's like, well, it kind of is looking at where the bar of quarterback play is in the NFL right now.
I'm just saying, people that are paid by big organizations, draft, not just draft wise, but NFL analyst wise, are still listing him there. I say keep him out there. He gives you the best chance to evaluate your wide receivers, your offensive line, your tight ends, and your running backs. And you need to be evaluating the foundation of this roster and what you want to carry from 24 to 25. That is the most important thing in these next 9 weeks, is figuring out who is a pillar, who's a cornerstone, and who's even a damn stepping stone.
Goddamn straight. And I think that is something that's being lost. And I was hearing Browns Daily and Zagura kept going back to wanting to see DTR. There'll be time for that. But DTR doesn't help you evaluate your playmakers right now.
He's just a runner right now.
And look, man, there'll be time for that. I'm not even saying Jameis starts the rest of the season. I'm saying the next 5-6 weeks, it's going to be Jameis. You're going to get to evaluate your offense. You're going to get to evaluate your line. They already said they're leaving DeWand out there. You're starting to see those evaluation things come in now. But if I want to evaluate, is Elijah Moore, does he need to be here? Then I need a guy who's going to deliver on schedule, and I know everyone's down because of the game he just had. Dude, the Chargers are the number one scoring defense in the NFL. That didn't just happen this week. And you want to know it's a bitch? We played Jim's brother last week. You don't think they talked? You don't think that there was some sort of communication there about ways to approach what you could take away from certain things? And, it put you in a rough spot. So all of a sudden have this avalanche of, because it was Jameis up, Jameis down. And that is the problem with Jameis is there is a chasm between his ceiling and his floor.
Yep.
That exists. But his highs are higher. There's not 32 quarterbacks more talented than Jameis Winston. It's just not a thing, And he said it himself 2 weeks ago. When I consistently make good reads play to play, I'm an elite quarterback. That's it. That's what it comes down to. Play to play, if he can make elite reads, he has all the talent to pull it off. Problem is, every now and again, his gunslinger gets the best of him, and he'll force the ball into certain areas, trying to make stuff happen. And when you're playing the Chargers, I can't even explain it because the Chargers on paper, they should have a good pass rush. They're not really that good of a pass rushing team. They should have a good pass rush, but they're starting a bunch of rookies in their secondary, but they've been elite all season. It didn't just happen. You know what I mean? They're a very, very good defense, one of the very best defenses in the NFL, and you came up short against them. Now, here's the bitch of it is you're playing a bunch of teams that, in my opinion, aren't really good coming up, but they all have good defenses.
Yeah.
The Saints are vastly underperforming. Now, they did ship off Lattimore today.
Yep.
We'll see how that changes their chemistry on the back end.
But
these teams have good defenses. So you're going to have to prove yourself against good defenses. But I need to evaluate what this team is going forward. And for me, that is the line and the playmakers.
And they also fired their defensive play caller head coach.
Yes. So that could change things drastically. And
apparently everybody hates Derek Carr. That's what I learned on Twitter.
So this isn't from Twitter. This is from Locked On Scouting NFL with Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs. So in the history of the NFL, losing his quarterback after 4 seasons is David Carr. After 5 seasons, it's David Carr. 6 seasons, David Carr. 7 seasons, Derek Carr. Derek Carr, Derek Carr, Derek Carr. For the guys with all these starts and their winning percentage, the Carr brothers have the worst winning percentage of any quarterback with X amount of starts.
That's brutal.
Through seasons. It's insane.
That's to the point about the quarterback conversation. I think what I was trying to say is that because there's a lack of a ton of young quarterbacks in the league right now, it seems like teams are like Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, all these older quarterbacks that have done it before. Like teams are just clinging onto them. And the Saints did it. Like they've tried Spencer Rattler, they benched him, already. Like it's just so it's crazy to me how the NFL is working right now because so many of these guys are getting benched like near immediate. Like they have like a bad couple games and they're just like, nope, you're on the bench, and that's.
I think that is why I would recommend for any college quarterback right now to play as long in college as you can, because the pros are not giving you a chance to develop like they used to.
Especially
you
now
used to get years to develop. You don't get that now.
Yeah, especially now that you can make money, like real money in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I understood it before when the NIL wasn't a thing, and it was like, hey, you're a second round, even if you're a second or a third round pick, that's life-changing money immediately. So, like, what's up, Nick? Chris said he voted. He'll check the election results afterwards. That's where I'm at. I like it.
I voted.
But yeah, no, with the NIL, like, I love Garrett Nussmeier. I think he should go back. I love Jalen Milroe. I like Jalen Milroe's tools. I think he should go back. I think Drew Aller should go back.
Well, you're seeing what it did for Cam. Cam Ward could have came out last year and been a day 2 quarterback.
He was a day 3 guy last year.
He could have been a day 2 based off skills. Quarterbacks get pushed up.
Sure.
But look what he's done for himself by sticking around, going to another program, learning. And like it was, I just see you said it in the chat just now, but these colleges aren't teaching guys how to be pros because that's not the college coach's job. The college coach's job is to keep his job.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's just trying to win. He ain't worrying about like developing this guy for the Titans or for the Browns or, you know what I'm saying? So you're just trying to get the most out of your system. But if you're, I agreed. If you're Nussmeier, if you're Milrow, you know, and the NIL makes it easier.
Yeah.
In the past, you would see guys have to kind of make that leap. But if you just think about Josh Allen came into the league, super high pick because all the tools. But he went to a smaller school, so it was considered a reach, and he wasn't accurate in college. And there was a lot of reasons to say that this might not work. And the Bills stuck with him because those first 2 years weren't good, but they stuck with him. And you saw he came out the other side. You know what I mean? He didn't say that. He didn't say that, dude. Brian did not say to blow it up. It's
I think
bullshit. You know it, Josh. You're making
I
that
think
up.
he did say this one though.
Oh,
Hold on.
Yeah, Brian would have
that's
said
tough.
that.
That's
Yeah,
tough
he
stuff.
definitely said that. I don't know about that first one, but
He did. And that's Josh interjecting his own agenda, which we're going to talk about. Josh, feel free to comment. I'll battle you all night long.
you guys are out of control.
I'm
All
not
right.
happy.
I get it. So one thing that I talked about with you guys before the show leading up this morning was like, hey, we're going to have this conversation about why you should blow it up, why you shouldn't blow it up. And what I think we have a really unique situation. I haven't like checked in with you guys, like to ask you specifically where you sit on this topic this week. Anyway, I've talked to you guys about it in previous weeks, but I think our show kind of provides a really unique grouping because at least going through most of this season, Casey has been very don't blow it up for most of the season. Again, I don't know where you guys stand right now. We'll get into that in a second. But Nick has been one of the more blow it up people that I have talked to and interacted with leading it up. I have been the most wishy-washy, lukewarm son of a bitch in the franchise because I can't figure it out. I'll lead like going through the week. I'll start on one and end on the other, and then the game will happen. I'll go dramatically in one direction, and then I'll change by the time we get to Tuesday. Like I have been so back and forth.
You changed from the time the game ended to 8:00 Sunday.
Right, which is why we don't. Yeah, which is why I went on the OBR postgame show at 7, and I never do shows the day after the day of a loss because I'm just so all over the place. And I was actually relatively calm on there. I think listening to Pete Smith, kind of in Brad Ward too, just kind of where they were, kind of helped keep me calm. I just get really emotional, and I don't think rational when I'm being emotional. But my point is, we've got every end of the spectrum on this show leading into this episode to have this conversation. I think that's why I think this conversation will be a good one. So I'm going to kick it off with Casey. Let me ask my first question. Right now, don't go into it. Just give me a simple response. I'll ask Casey, then I'll ask Nick. Yay or nay to the blow it up. That way I know where I'm going to direct this conversation.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm starting over.
Okay. Casey, you have the floor.
Losing sucks. And it taints your perspective the same way that winning does the opposite way. You have too much talent on this roster. And that's why it's frustrating that you're losing, because you know there's pieces in place. Things have not broke your way this season. But we went through a 7-day period from beating probably the best team in the league to shitting the bed in your next game at home. And I get we're reactionary people. What we see the most recently affects our mentals, and it clouds and it weighs on you that that it's not working, and and this has been a bad season. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I also know who the fuck's making these decisions, and I trust the people they have in place right now. I don't know who Jimmy would get next.
Yep.
I don't know what that move looks like, but it scares the shit out of me. And there'll have to be some sort of shakeup. Obviously, you can't go through, in my mind, and here's the crux of the issue. This was supposed to be a season of consequence. This was supposed to be a team that had something to say about not just the AFC North, but the AFC in general. You were poised to do that. We were tethered to Deshaun Watson in a way that I don't think fans, analysts really comprehended, as far as this team was going to be as good or as bad as Watson was, and they would let it derail the season if it came to that. We thought that there would be some eject button. We see that they signed Jameis in the offseason, that they have a plan B if things don't work out, but they were willing to ride that bitch all the way into the mountain. This coaching staff, the front office, these guys, Stefanski and Barry, were extended prior to the season. They're working in lockstep. To us, it feels like sabotage because we're fans. And you're like, oh, you don't give a shit about whether we win or lose. Their vision isn't just this year. Their vision is 4 or 5 years down the line. And if I look at the pieces in place, and also what comes with blowing it up. Blowing it up means we're getting rid of players. Do you understand what kind of shit comes to roost if you unload these players and the dead cap that descends upon you immediately? You will be in cap purgatory for 3 to 4 years if you move on from a lot of these cornerstones. And then you're handcuffed. The way that people on the outside want us to be handcuffed by the Watson contract will literally be done. That'll actually happen. Not with Watson, with if you're blowing it up and you're shipping off assets and doing everything you can to get draft picks to build for the future. You don't have to do that, man. Your cornerstones are still here. You need to move some shit around. Obviously, you need to pivot away from Watson. That's a whole other conversation. I don't think we're going to get into that tonight, but I think we can see the writing on the wall. He's not going to work out. You're basically going to have to eat that money. That's lying in your bed after you made it. That's what that is. You have to lay in your bed now. You've set that up for yourself. It didn't work. You took a swing. I get why they took the swing at the time. I was in favor of taking the swing because I wanted the highest of highs. Mm-hmm. It didn't work. That doesn't mean you just blow the whole goddamn thing up. I still have Myles Garrett, a first ballot Hall of Famer in his physical prime. You know what I mean? Like you don't just move away from that just because you're emotional and things don't feel good right now. Take a breath. When we come into this thing, by the end of the season, we're probably going to win a handful of games. This isn't going to be an overly successful season. I hope it's fun while it lasts. Hope we are able to ruin some team seasons on the way. I think that would make us feel a little bit better about the situation. But you guys remember what 1-31 was, right? Why do we want to go back to that if you don't have to? You have a base level of talent. And you got some young players that on this roster that are playing pretty damn good football that's going to allow you to get cheaper in the long run because they're under rookie contracts. And you saw them trade Za'Darius away. Well, how do you do that? Well, it's because McGuire's playing well.
Yeah.
If McGuire's not playing well, you can't just move on from Z. You can. And as long as these things keep coming to fruition, if Diabate keeps playing, you know what I mean? And at some point you're going to probably – this sucks for McLeod because it's his last season. Probably going to trend away from him, start playing Hickman more. And you're going to start seeing some of these younger guys get more looks. But I just see too much promise to allow this dark feeling to want me to just pull it all apart because I know what pulling it all apart really looks like. And there's no saying that you get another Myles Garrett. You can trade that away for picks. You think you're just going to hit another guy like that? Probably not, man. That shit is so rare. You know, if you just look back to that draft, what if you'd have been higher on Solomon Thomas than Myles Garrett? You know what I mean? Like you hit on that.
He was a hell of a prospect.
You can't waste the fact that you hit on a generational player. You know what I mean? And just get rid of it. Things that worry me. This offensive line got old fast. So you have to retool that. That is something that needs completely retooled. And we're going to start pivoting away from fan favorites, guys that have been here a long time. That's and an offensive line is a harder thing to rebuild. That isn't just slap together some free agents, man. You're going to have to build that. And that might take a year or two before you get it going in the direction you want it to go. Obviously, the quarterback's going to be the thing that hangs over this whole thing because it does the entire league, as Nick pointed out earlier. There is a shit ton of bad quarterback play. You got to figure that out. But I just see too much here to pull it apart and start from scratch. And I don't trust Jimmy to get that right.
That's the biggest risk, right? Because I do agree that there's been more promise with Stefanski and Barry than any other regime that I've seen in my Browns fan lifetime. And I do acknowledge that, and I have believed in them. But I just look at where the Browns are, man. And they were more likable at 1-31 than they are right now. This whole saga, everything that this regime is revolves around this Deshaun Watson trade. It's divided the fan base. It's made the Browns a villain nationally. It's taken fans away from you. It's just this cloud that's hung over. And in Casey, to your point about understanding the logic behind the swing, I get the logic behind the swing. I do. And I defended the logic behind the swing. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that it didn't make sense at the time, because I get that. But there's so much more to it. Like you made the decision to give up on Baker Mayfield, and I get it. Maybe you say he never becomes that or whatever. But the fact is that Baker Mayfield is giving Tampa Bay far, like you would drop to your knees if Baker Mayfield. I would drop to my knees if Baker Mayfield's if Deshaun Watson could give us Baker Mayfield level play here in Cleveland. And this is a trade that they have given more assets for this than any other trade I can remember, and set this record guaranteed contract that just nobody can ever stop talking about. And you just see the cap hits and all these things that they're saddled with that have come along with this. And then I look at it and I say, you are spending the most money in the NFL, and you are one of the worst teams in it. And to me, that's completely, that is as bad of an outcome as it could be, because you have as many resources to get this thing right as you could possibly have, as anybody could have, right? If you have more, and so it's not, you're not even mediocre. You're terrible. You're terrible. They've been terrible. We got one little reprieve against the Ravens, but aside from that, they've been the worst offense in football. And have just really been listless. They've made so many questionable decisions. It's like you go on this magical playoff run last year, and then you replace the majority of your offensive staff, and you come out and you are just, you look lost. You have no attention to detail. You've just got more penalties than anybody. They took such a massive step backwards. They were at such a pivotal point as a franchise where we said we could really build off of this 11-win season. And it's like, you let Flacco walk out the door, and even Mary Kay Cabot have said they couldn't keep him for reasons that we all know. And it's like, that's not acceptable to me. That's not acceptable to me. I watched this quarterback play better than any quarterback that the Browns have had really since healthy Baker Mayfield in 2020, right? At this point, and you let that guy go, and I get it. It hasn't been magical for Indianapolis to this point, but it still just remains to me the point that I just look at their decisions, and I look at the path that we've taken to get here, and there is definitely some good. There's definitely some good. It's a shame Alex Wright's hurt, and I definitely agree with that. Elijah McGuire has been a good, and I love the Obo Okoronkwo signing, and there's a bunch of picks that look good. But I just think about the product that you put on the field, and really what you've done to the fan base and to the Browns nationally. Like, I've watched the Browns, when the Browns were trotting Deshaun out there, they couldn't even talk about him without getting just completely for a lack of a better term, just ratioed because of the quarterback and because of it's this image that they've created. It's just so unlikable and so it just Cleveland. They've just created this environment where it's like Cleveland was always like this lovable loser franchise, and nobody wants to be that, but you certainly don't want to be bad and hated. And I just think about the costs of that, and they're hard to measure. And I just think when you make this type of franchise altering trade, that's the bed you are putting yourself in. It's the bed you're putting yourself in, and it is as bad. Like people can reasonably say it's one of the worst trades in NFL history. And to me, that is what defines this regime. And it's unfortunate because I think they've done a lot of good. But if you're making the worst trade in franchise history and you're fully guaranteeing that dude's deal, which now hampers us for the next 2 years beyond this, I can't see you coming back from that. I can't see you coming back from that. It's irredeemable to me.
Let me play devil's advocate, because everything that really comes around the issues you have is Deshaun Watson. So if he is removed from the situation, I know you're not going to get a guarantee, because until he's off the roster, you're not going to get a guarantee that he's not going to that they're not going to turn to him again. You're just not, because when he's on the roster, he's on the roster. So
which I'm terrified about that. Can I just say that?
Absolutely.
We've all had,
we all have had that moment. Trust me. I've had them this week, and it's only Tuesday.
If I have to see that dude out there on the field for the Cleveland Browns again, I am going to lose my mind. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. If we have to have these discussions again with him, still, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't know. Sorry.
No, you're fine. But so my follow up just becomes, if that is removed from the situation, he's removed, how does that change your opinion?
It certainly improves it. It's certainly, because there's a lot there's a lot of good. I'm seeing Cedric Tillman look like he really belongs. That's highly encouraging. Michael Hall looks like a good pick to me. There's a bunch of Jacob. We had a conversation on this show, the three of us, a couple weeks ago, about the undrafted free agent class. There is a lot that encourages me, but it's just like you made this colossal decision, and it has gone as badly as it could go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But one thing I come back to, and this is kind of where I am internally arguing, is that's just one decision. And I understand that one decision has had crippling, lasting effects, and it's going to keep. And I see all the comments, guys, and I'm going to try to get to them all as soon as I can, because you've been kind of commenting, and I want to wrap that stuff up when we get a little bit further into this conversation. So, I see you guys. I'm going to get to those, I promise. And I understand that it's this lasting, crippling effect. But one thing that I keep coming back to is it's only one decision. So I start to look at this roster. So this is what I want to do. I just forgot. I literally closed this like 5 minutes ago because I didn't think.
While you're doing that, I kind of want to respond to Nick.
Yeah.
There's no arguing, and people were right. And it sucks when you hear it said that this is the worst trade in not just NFL history, maybe pro sports history.
But it is.
It's completely legitimate. I can't. What am I going to say to defend that? It absolutely has been. But I think if you allow just that one decision to completely change the overall trajectory of what your organization is, when we look around at our own division, there's two teams that stick out because they're fucking consistent.
Yeah,
and that's what you're striving for. And and I'm not even trying to say we're on their level, because we're not, because they've been doing it for decades now. You know what I mean? But that's what you're striving for. And I just think that allowing that one player who's everything about it sucked. His play, of course, but it's everything around the negativity that surrounds it. It's like a dark cloud that hangs over the entire franchise.
Yep.
We can get past that storm, and there's bright days ahead. But if we tear it all down, we're allowing that we're making that we're causing the worst trade in NFL history to so like just collapse the whole organization. I think this regime can outlast the funk that's over top of them. And I don't give a fuck about the money. And people will keep. Yes, you're going to have to pay the dude. You guaranteed his contract.
Yep.
But the way there's not been a single player you haven't been able to sign because of that contract. You have not had to change the way you do business because of that contract. This is the way they do business. It'll free up a bunch of shit on the other side of it. But there's not been one time where you couldn't sign a free agent or you couldn't extend one of your own. They've been able to keep doing that. They're going to be able to keep doing that, even with his numbers on the roster. I just can't have him on the field.
Yes.
That'll be the thing that brings me down.
Yeah. And one thing you talk about not being hamstrung by that money, keep in mind they traded to Zadarius Smith today for draft compensation and were willing to take on $6 million in dead cap. 14 million.
14?
That's down to 4. It was 4. Yeah, there was an adjusted number. So over 14 million in dead cap next year. They were willing to take that on because they have, I would assume, a plan to navigate that. And we talked about this last week with why I was happy they had played well with Jameis because it had me feeling really good about the regime. I love what Andrew Berry has been able to do with the salary cap. If there is somebody that can navigate this Watson ordeal over the next 2 years as they try to get him off the roster, I think it is Andrew Berry. So I will give him all of the props in the world when it comes to that aspect of things, because retaining him, that portion of it, I will feel really good about that portion of it. I will, no matter what.
And moving on from him scares you because if the next guy can't manage the cap in that same way, all these contracts that you front loaded are back loaded the way they do, that's when you end up in a Saints situation where they're 60 million over the cap for next year right now. And they've done the same thing we've done, but they're going to have to move away from those players so that dead cap just collapses on top of them. And that will cause you to not be able to put a playable product on the field.
Yeah. Well, so that aspect, so I go back and forth and I think about, like, one thing I think you can't, I don't love to say, hey, I'm going to keep a regime because I don't know what you're going to get to replace it. That scares me a little bit. And I know that's not what you're saying, Casey. You're talking about just the cap situation. Who's going to, if that person's not that they won't be able to hire somebody that's a competent general manager, because I'm sure they would be able to do that. Competent enough, I don't know, because I've seen the track record of the person that is doing the hiring, and it hasn't been all that great.
Right.
Here's the thing about this. I wanted to highlight MC's comment. Jimmy's given AB everything he's asked for. He spent more money than anyone else. He's blown it. I'm just not completely there that he's blown everything. Two things I think Andrew Berry has really miscalculated. They really blew the quarterback thing.
Facts.
And they miscalculated this offensive line this year. They came into this year. They hitched their wagons on 2-3 injured tackles. Mm-hmm. Thought that they were going to they thought all three of them were going to be ready. We go back and see what they said, see what the players said. Jeff said MC hates AB because of Baker. I think he has a little resentment for AB because of Baker, but I don't think he hates him for that reason.
MC, check your boy. Your boy wanted to leave too. Don't act like that wasn't like it was all the Browns saying, get out of here. Like, he was done with us. I could point to the second that it happened in the Steelers game. Like,
why does a player decide if they play or not? Why did they not have the power to just tell his ass to sit down? Because by Baker's own admission, he was deciding if he was playing or not.
That's a massive blind spot, and I've always pointed that out.
Yeah, because they don't do that with any other position. Like
it just feels like a very poor decision making. Like that the way you have run this franchise and the way you gave Baker that ability to make that decision is a major piece of how we have ended up here.
Yeah, for sure. Because again, they've blown the quarterback position.
Yep.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like you want to say AB has blown everything. I don't think that's true. I think they've made a massive, terrible decision about the quarterback position and about the offensive line. And then their offensive line got injured. Ethan Posick turned back into a pumpkin. That's a thing that happened. He turned back into a pumpkin. Wyatt Teller's gotten hurt. Conklin's been really good. I mean, I didn't think he was great this week, but he's been really
he's
good.
only been there for a couple weeks too.
Yeah.
That's a massive problem.
Well, that's my point. The
his
point
play was fine.
Yeah.
One other question. I'm sorry. I just need to ask this. I have one other question because one of the biggest pieces to me is looked at the leading passing offense last year, and I get it. There's caveats to that. The run game was bad. I understand that. But it's like you have this 2-time coach of the year, and it seems to me that he did not decide to change out the whole offensive staff. And now he's not even the play caller. And it's just like, I just wonder, it's like, where are these decisions coming from? How is this power structure actually working? Right? If I felt like, and I feel like this show felt like Kevin Stefanski proved himself last year, and it just feels like the power has been taken from him. And I just don't understand that from an organizational perspective when you're saying this head coach showed true leadership through such incredible adversity last year and made NFL history in making the playoffs with all the quarterbacks they had to start. And then it's like you enter this year, he has to send out his whole offensive staff, and the offense looks as bad as it's ever looked under him, right? And then he has to give up play calling. It's like it just doesn't feel like the guy that got you there is being empowered to keep taking you there. At least to me.
Well, because they had to make Watson work. I know, dude, but that's the position they were in. That was the position they were in because they took the swing of all swings for the fences and they whiffed on it. But you had to do that. Like it
was a last ditch effort to see what you could get out of him.
Yeah. And what they should have done is cut bait and benched him sooner.
Yes.
But
that wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
The plan was to be as good or as bad as he was going to be this year. And let that get you a high draft pick if he's terrible. And if it's good, great. Then your investment pays off.
If it's good, you win a bunch of football games. If it's bad, you can legitimately say, we got to move on. And it was bad. And that really sucks. It really sucks on a year that this roster is as good as I've seen it in a long time. There's been some disappointments. He has been in a pretty bad mood for weeks.
We got one good week in there.
I lived that weekend up. I promise you.
He did. He really did.
That's the thing, though, is we're going to have more of those. We're going to have those games where the talent shows up, where Jameis plays at the top of his game, and you're going to beat some of these teams. It just isn't going to matter in the grand scheme of things because you're not playing for the playoffs now.
Yeah.
It would take a catastrophic collapse by the Chargers, the Colts, these teams that are all in front of you. They would have to implode for you to make it based on the hole that you're in. But you're still going to have those fun games. As long as Jameis is out there, it's on the table, you know. Nick brings up a lot of good points, man.
Yeah.
Whose idea was it to retool? Was it everybody come together and be like, okay, look, this is what we're going to do? Because here's what I think is happening right now. The reason that Stefanski is not calling the plays is they're evaluating Dorsey.
Yeah.
So I'm not sold that Dorsey's here next year based on what we've seen. And if you were to revert and go back to a straight up, we're going to run zone, we're going to be under center, we're going to do play action, run 12 personnel. I think that Stefanski would be calling plays next year. A lot of people will be pissed about that. I'll be happy because we know what the floor of that looks like. You're going to score 20 points a game. As long as the guy's competent, you'll score 20. And then this defense has regressed. None of us saw that coming. I thought this was going to be something they were able to build upon and shore up some of the things they didn't do well last year. They were amazing between the 20s last year. The yardage things, it was the best that the NFL had seen in 10 years as far as holding opposing offenses to yardage. But the red zone defense was terrible. There were situations they just weren't good at. I thought those would come together because all those dudes are in their prime and they're getting another year in the system. And we hear about the change-up pitch that's going to have to come, and none of that's worked. You know what I mean? So there are questions on the defensive side of the ball too. That is still a very talented unit. But I know we're really focused on the offense. The defense needs to change as well. And I don't know where you go there. I don't know what the answer is to getting to that next level for this defense, because I think with the talent level, I think that next level could be special. And I thought we were in store to see it this year, and we just haven't. We've seen lapses. They'll play great. Dude, I wrote about it for the OBR. Like, first and second down, they were killing the Chargers, dude. Murdering them. Murdering them. Third down, epic collapse. Every time it was a third down. Pants. Just like, how does that happen? And it's the good – these are good players making terrible decisions in the moment, and it's communication errors and things that absolutely should not be happening week 9 in the second year of a system. Like, those kinks should be long gone by now, So there's a regression on defense. Offense has been a jumbled mess. We don't even know – we know what the identity is when Winston's on the field. It's vertical. We're a vertical team. We're going to take shots. We're going to take chunk plays. And we run the ball better. It didn't really come to fruition against the Chargers, but props to the Chargers. They had us schemed up proper. They knew exactly how to attack us.
They had a flawless defensive game plan, man. Yes. It was flawless.
But I'm not going to let that – and look, if that happens again against the Saints and then following Thursday against the Steelers, then you see a trend and then whatever's whatever. But I'm not going to let this one game be like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. We've seen it work against the Ravens, It's just you got to keep building. But there are a lot of tweaks that need to happen. But I don't think it's sweeping wholesale changes is going to get you where you want to go.
Do you want to hear where I'm at?
Hell yeah.
I've given a lot of things that I think, but I haven't definitively said where I'm at. I'm legitimately at a spot where I personally would run it back. But I'm not upset if they don't. Like, I'm at a spot now where if they don't run it back, because I look at things like, this is a theme now, and it's across defensive coordinators, where communication issues are happening at times they should not be happening. That's happened more than a handful of times in the 5 years that this regime's been there.
Well, I can name so many.
I can probably name 10 to 15 without even trying.
Egregious.
Like, I mean, I can name, 4 or 5 from this week, so it wouldn't be that hard to get to 10 to 15. So that starts to become why is that? Because you can say all this stuff about Joe Woods. Well, now it's happening with Jim Schwartz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now that has happened over 5 seasons with 2 coordinators. Why the hell can Bubba Ventrone can't coach special teams anymore? So that's a problem. Again, had some issues with Prefer, have some issues there. This year specifically, I've got a lot of issues with these. Like, we had one game where they didn't have procedural penalties.
Yeah.
One game, and then we go right back into it. And I still think that one on Judy, they're like, well, he was moving forward.
He was not going forward, man. He was lateral.
And this is what I want to say. I will even give it to them that he was moving forward. I'm with you, but for sakes of an argument, I'll let them have that one. But I will follow it up with, how did he have an unfair advantage? Because that's what a penalty is. A penalty is you did something to gain an unfair advantage against your opponent, so we're penalizing you for that. If you go watch what he did, but still, we've had that problem all year long, so they shouldn't even do anything that puts it into the ref's hands. They need, and I get it. There's some bad calls. There's plenty of that. I see Chris talking about the bad call on DeJuan Jones on the hold. I'm with you. I didn't really think that was a hold, but whatever. that stuff's a growing theme. I have a problem with that. If you can identify that problem, I don't think you can, because I've seen 5 years that says you can't. So I'm so like, if I was making the pick, I'd bring him back. But for some of those reasons right there, where that is a cultural thing to me. Because it's not a specific coach, unless you want to say it's Kevin Stefanski because he's the head coach, because we've seen so many coaches change. And I understood some of these procedural things to start the year because they did have such a new offense. Like so many, you know what I mean? Like,
and they didn't get to practice together because of all the injuries are all coming back at different times. So time on task, but like you're professionals, man.
Don't move until you're supposed to move. Line up where you're supposed to.
I've always been that way, though. I don't give a shit. Dude, effort penalties are one thing, man. Like, you're getting after a quarterback, your hand slides up, touches his helmet, or a pass interference. But pre-snap, I can't stand that shit, man. That to me, that's
a player problem.
Basic.
That's either you. It's two things. It's a coach can't communicate properly, and a player problem. I'm not absolving coaches from that because
no, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen if it's repeat offenders.
You're not. It's like Freddie always said, I don't coach penalties. Yeah, no shit. But you also don't coach your guys to stop doing it either. Mm-hmm. Like, that's on you, man. So, like, for reasons like that, I'm okay with moving on from Kevin Stefanski because of things like that continue to add up. And then this year at times has felt like death by 1,000 cuts because it's not like they're going out there. Like Deshaun was bad, but he wasn't throwing multiple interceptions a game bad. Like it could have been worse is what I'm saying. But it was the little things. It was not throwing the ball more than 5 yards, throwing it behind, being in 3rd and 15 because of a penalty and things like that, where I'm like, why can't this get cleaned up? Like, I what's going on there? Like, you've got to figure it out. And that's why I think even if you bring Stefanski back, there's going to be major changes on his staff. If you try to run this staff back, I have zero faith in this staff moving forward. This staff as it sits. I don't see a scenario where you can do that. Andrew Berry needs to bring somebody else in somewhere to assist with something. I don't know, but you should do a change up there too. But you get what I'm saying? I'm okay with bringing those guys back with the caveat that they still need to make changes because what is going on right now, especially on the coaching staff on some of these stupid things, it's not working.
To your point, that's part of why maybe I should I could see the defense of Kevin Stefanski, because a lot of these problems that we've found this year were not problems previous to changing out the staff. And personally, I don't think Kevin wanted to change out the staff like he did. And so it's like, if that wasn't his, no, there's some things that I feel like are on Kevin Stefanski. Like I don't care what your offensive tackle situation is. When you come out there and look like they did through the first, or still do, right? Like, you need to be playing in preseason. You are not a team that has the luxury to not play in preseason. And I look at that. That's on you, Kevin. That's on you, Kevin. And I don't care. I know the injuries hampered you. I get that. But you can't just say, well, because we have injuries, we're not going to be at all functional as an offense entering the season. That's completely inexcusable. I firmly hold that against him. You have to recognize this. And if you can't recognize that you're going to have these problems in game situations, you are not doing a good enough job in practice to get these guys in real situations to prepare them. Okay. So I look at that and I'm just like, Kevin, what are we doing, guy? Because that's on you. That's on you. And I get it. You change out the staff, you change the offense. Okay, then it's your job as a head coach to recognize that you need more prep time, and you got to get those guys out there in preseason. And if you're not going to do it that way, then you would sure as hell better be doing it in practice, right? And obviously that didn't happen. That is a complete preparation failure from the entire staff, especially offensively, right? Like we've never seen from Kevin. And maybe so, you know, it was a lot harder on him because they had to change basically the entire offensive staff. I don't know how much of that was his decision, right? But it's still on you as the head coach to make it work. You have to make it work. And I just want to say, so I feel like this is such a complicated conversation because there's so much good and so much bad on both things.
I haven't even gotten through everything. Like, this may have to be part of the second
right.
show too.
Like you're Andrew Berry, okay? I acknowledge Grant Delpit, great pick. JOK, great pick. Maybe DeJuan Jones is going to be a tackle that you found, and that looks great. But it's like, but at the same time, Jacob, you and I had this conversation when we were together. We were okay with Greg Newsome getting shipped out of town. Okay, that's one of your first round picks. You got Jedrick Wills, who can't even start anymore. That's the 10th overall pick. It's like, on one hand, you're Andrew Berry and you're getting these undrafted free agents and some of these second round picks really well, but it's like you're blowing the 10th overall pick, man. We can't be doing it.
He's only had 2 first round picks, and he's only had 2 second round picks.
Well, why didn't he have more first round and second round picks?
The second round picks because he made some moves to get Elijah Moore was a second round pick. He traded back and got Martin Emerson. That was his second round pick, and added a third round pick that was Alex Wright. And yeah, the one big move. I understand that, but that's my point. I understand people talking about the draft capital, like not making great draft selections at the top. He hasn't had any. I mean, he hasn't had any. Greg Newsome, you know, it's like Greg Newsome is fine. He's a serviceable guy. Let me ask you something. What second round pick has he blown? Because he hasn't.
I would say that Elijah Moore trade you mentioned, if you're looking for a wide receiver, right, I would really like to have Jaden Reed on this team over moving down from the pick that you had that you could have used to take Jaden Reed to get Elijah Moore. Now, I get it.
You got Elijah, but you got Cedric Tillman too. You got Tillman and Moore for that 42.
Right. That's fair.
So that trade was not Elijah Moore. That trade was Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman.
And in 22 and 23, you didn't have first round picks, but you walked away with first round talent in Emerson and DeJuan Jones.
And your 2 second round picks are Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Grant Delpit.
Cornerstones.
So very good and very bad, right? And that's why this conversation is so difficult.
It is.
Yeah.
It
no,
is.
You're right. Well, that's like I'm looking at the time. I'm like, man, we got to wrap this thing up. But like, I've got shit to say. So I'm so sorry to everybody in the. I'm so sorry.
Let's run through some comments before we go, man.
Let's get to some comments.
We'll have to rapid fire people, but let's get your voices.
Fire some questions. There's no questions.
It's just people screaming into the void.
Mick, yeah, they're just screaming at the wall. Keep Chubb, JOK, Garrett, Njoku, Petonio, Teller, Jones. Keep Delpit. He's not on that list. Everyone else is on the table. I would add some more.
Emerson's not leaving, going anywhere.
I'm not keeping. I don't know that Joel's going to play again.
Yeah, that's it. And I'll tell you right now, and if you move on, Joel's gone for sure. And that's the other thing we're not talking about here is you have a lot of young, talented players, but as soon as you bring in a new GM who didn't draft those guys, all of a sudden they just become pieces that they're not attached to.
You're in a weird, and then you're in a shitty, even shittier cap position. Chris says I'm well over 60. I'll be dead before they reach a conference if you blow it all up. Okay, yeah.
I get it, Chris.
I know MC wants to get rid of Andrew Berry, but doesn't want to blow it all up. Okay.
Hey,
well, that's the other nuance. We're talking about run it back. There's different variations of running it back.
You know what?
Same 3 guys.
Washington couldn't do anything right. They had one really good draft with their new regime, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we are here. The Cowboys look listless, and I don't know. The Eagles are up and down. Like Washington's going to come. It can happen in a year.
Yeah.
It can if you do it right.
You have 11 draft picks. Anyway,
Do you have?
do you know right now they have 5 6s?
That's crazy.
They have 5 6s. Because Joe Flacco just played enough snaps so that the comp pick that was supposed to be a 7 is now expected to be a 6. So
Okay.
It will take a couple years to eat Watson's cap. Need to recoup assets in the time. That's why I agreed with the Zadarius Smith trade.
Yeah, I do too.
I am surprised there weren't more. I
agree.
I think they tried to move Quentin Jefferson. There weren't any takers. So what Barry does in those situations, he's going to do right by the player. Is keep a good working relationship with an agent and let that guy go play somewhere else. I mean, obviously we're not in the building, but you're going to find it hard to believe they didn't try to shop Newsome, Wills, guys who don't project to be long-term pieces here.
If you want to keep the nucleus of players, change the entire front office and coaching staff, but I don't know that they'll keep.
You can't do that because the new front office ain't going to think that's not their nucleus, Josh.
Right.
They're going to want to bring in their own people.
I didn't acknowledge that. You're right.
That's the way it works. When you bring
That's
in a new front
that's
office.
the biggest. That's probably the biggest issue. The cap navigation, which goes hand in hand with that, is what would worry me about changing it.
Well, I heard things this week and it made me think. Like it was like, okay, there was a bullshit rumor about Njoku being shopped. I want to live in an era where we have multiple players who play their entire career in Cleveland. We're seeing it with Joel. That's good. I want to see that with Chubb. I want to see that with Njoku. I want to see that with Myles Garrett. And that gives you multiple windows. That isn't just this 4 years. Those guys, that's also the reason they draft so damn young, is because we're talking about Myles Garrett, who's going to be 29, just still right in his physical prime. Same thing with Njoku. Yeah, they've been here a while, but they're just now really like coming into their physical prime, and they're going to get third contract players with the same organization. That's something we haven't had. You know what I mean? And I think you could have multiple, but when you change the front office, those players will be the first to go. I promise you that.
That's I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I know you're right. Because we've seen it here happen a million times.
Not my guy.
Yeah.
Not my guy syndrome.
Not my guy.
There is about who the assistant GM is. There's 2. Catherine Reich. Is it Reich?
I always said Reich.
Yeah, I think
I've never heard it pronounced. So
yeah, and Glenn Cook. Those are your 2 front offices. We didn't get to everything, but maybe we will have a Saturday show coming. It will not be live. The Saturday shows will just come up on YouTube. I think this Saturday we're going to do what we would do with the front office, coaching staff,
like that,
and the roster moving forward in terms of this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to lay it out. We're going to we're each going to label a certain amount of players untouchable. Have to have them. We want to keep these guys. Don't try to trade them. Don't cut them. Don't anything. These guys need to be here. What we would do with the coaching staff, what we would do with the front office. The front office is pretty simple. We'd say change a GM or fire Andrew Berry or add an assistant, whatever. We're going to lay that out. We're going to put our brains together. We're going to say all that and ultimately get even further into this conversation. I know we didn't fully answer it. I think Casey's don't blow it up. Nick's leaning blow it up. I'm currently leaning keep it, but I'm not going to cry if you don't. That is where I'm at. So we're going to put our money where our mouth is for this bye week episode. It'll drop probably 8 a.m. on Saturday. It's not going to be live. It'll be pre-recorded. Okay. But Saturday morning, we'll probably drop it about 8 a.m. We're going to talk about what we would do with the coaching staff, front office, and some players that you absolutely have to have the foundation of moving forward.
I think you've both given me a lot to think about, and maybe I need to reevaluate my opinion. I'm not sure. But I feel like there's a lot of good knowledge that's been thrown around on this podcast, and I appreciate you both for that. And
I
I
felt
just
like I
want
got angry for a little bit of there, so you swayed me a bit too. Like,
Mm.
yeah, because I was like Casey was like saying stuff, and I was like, yeah, and then you started saying stuff, and I was like, yeah. I was like, God damn it!
Well, that's the nuance of these conversations, though, because there's no right wrong. We
No,
don't know the future.
and that's why. Well,
We're
and
all
that's also
projecting
the beauty.
where we think this is headed.
Mhm.
That's the beauty, because if you have this this has been turning into, this season has turned into evaluating the foundation of the roster. You're going to get at least somewhat adequate quarterback play, highs and lows, for 9 more games, more likely than not.
Mhm.
So you're going to be able to a QB with no drama would be nice. Yeah, no.
Well, I think that our next Tuesday show will be even more enlightened, though, because we won't be clouded by the results, good or bad, of a game on Sunday.
True.
It will be interesting. So
Right.
Saturday
So-
morning here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed.
I just want to say to all of you, thank you for being here, because I know there's a lot going on right now in the world, but we're doing some great viewers right now. We just crossed 1,000 subscribers. That means a ton to us, and I want you all to know, if you've made it this far, well, it means a ton to us. But this is not just gonna be a show of negativity, right? It's no secret that these two guys up here are already very knowledgeable in all things draft. I'm going to join them. We're going to start looking. Listen. The Browns have a ton of picks. Jacob mentioned it. We are going to find. I don't care who's drafting, right? However that goes, we're going to find solutions. We are going to be a podcast of solutions and hope and problem solving, right? Because the Browns are not going to be. They're not going to be bad forever. This might be a bad season, but I refuse to believe that they're going to be bad forever. They will figure it out. They're going to have the assets to do it. There's going to be avenues to improve. And I do agree with what both Jacob and Casey said. There is a lot of talent here still. It may not feel like that right now, but there is. Teams turn around all the time. We're going to talk about how the Browns are going to turn this around. So thank you to everybody for being here. No, it's been a tough season. You've been here with us every week. It just that's what Browns fans do, man. So we love you for that. With all of that being said, we will see you again Saturday, pre-recorded show, and many shows beyond that. This has been maybe a therapeutic episode.
Very.
Barking Brown Show. And Nick, he's Jacob. That's Casey. Go Browns. Love you, Chris.
Beep, 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 beep.